This is the first video in a mini-series on a very short list of teachings of Jesus which are optional. Surprisingly, Jesus does not pronounce eternal judgment on those who do not decide to follow his advice in these areas. There are not many teachings like this. But here's the interesting thing. The general public is still not being informed about the option. And people in churches everywhere are being told that the same behavior which Jesus advises against is more or less the right and best way to behave. Obviously, no church and no Christian is going to do much to promote true Christianity with an approach like this, unless the general public is made aware of the bigger picture. The advantages of the preferred option are going to be left out of everything we do. Just one more indication that the churches are stacked against everything that Jesus stood for. In this video, I'm going to discuss the concept of celibacy, staying single as opposed to getting married. A second noteworthy observation about this particular instruction is that the Apostle Paul also taught it, and he taught it in the same way that Jesus did. That is, that it is advisable, but it's not commanded. In the 7th chapter of Paul's first letter to the Corinthians, he speaks at length about this business of staying celibate, pointing out that what he is saying is his own personal advice and not a command from God. Paul said, "I would like all men to be like me." Paul was single, you see. "But every man has his proper gift from God, one after this manner, and another after that. I say therefore to the unmarried and the widows, it is good for them if they abide even as I do. But if they cannot contain, let them marry. For it is better to marry than to burn." Let me just comment on that word burn for a moment. Some people assume that what Paul was saying is, if you are tempted to have sex, get married. It's better to get married than to be tempted. I'm not so sure, especially when you consider that the same advice is not there either for a gay person or a divorced person. Such people are not given a choice. Burn or no burn, you just learn to live with it, and you stay single. No, I think it's talking about it being better to marry than to go to hell. You get one chance, only one, mind you. After that, you just have to learn to live with it if you're tempted. And that seems to be another teaching that gets sadly overlooked these days. Anyway, Paul went on to say, "Concerning virgins, I have no commandment of the Lord, yet I give my judgment as one that has obtained grace from the Lord to stay faithful. Therefore, I assume it is good in this present distress for others to be single too. Are you bound to a wife? Don't seek to be loosed. But are you loosed from a wife? Don't seek to have a wife. But if you marry, you have not sinned, and if a virgin marries, she has not sinned. Nevertheless, such shall have trouble in the flesh, but I spare you. This I say, brethren, the time is short. It remains that also those who have wives should be as though they had none." In another place, Paul wrote to Timothy, "The Spirit speaks expressly that in the latter times some shall depart from the faith, forbidding to marry," among other things. So what I'm saying here is not support for the Catholic practice of forbidding marriage to their priests. The world today is seeing what a perverted and twisted abomination that practice has brought about in the ranks of the Catholic clergy, where pedophilia has been rampant for decades. Nevertheless, Paul did say it is better to stay single if possible. And in the 19th chapter of Matthew, we see Jesus discussing the same issue with his 12 apostles. He had just told them that if a man marries and then divorces his wife, he is causing her to commit adultery, and if he remarries, he's committing adultery as well, and he will burn for it. His disciples said to him, "If the case of the man be so with his wife, it is not good to marry." But Jesus said unto them, "All men cannot receive this saying, except those to whom it is given. For there are some eunuchs which were so born from the mother's womb, and there are some eunuchs which were made eunuchs by men, and there are eunuchs which have made themselves eunuchs for the sake of the kingdom of heaven. He that is able to receive it, let him receive it. So, while Catholics are guilty of forbidding marriage for nuns and priests, Protestants tend to push their young people into marriage, usually for the purpose of avoiding sex outside of marriage, or maybe just to get them to settle down. Though I'm not sure if it's still the case that Protestants are worried about the young people having sex outside of marriage, because Protestants are more and more accepting that sex outside of marriage is the norm. Nevertheless, for some, marriage is still seen as the cure-all for promiscuity. Fine, if you want to get married, go for it. But don't forget, as Jesus was saying to his disciples when the conversation started, you only get one bite of the cherry. One chance to make marriage work. After that, it becomes adultery. Is that what you want? Are you prepared to risk it all on this person being the one person for you for life? Think about it very seriously. Now, one other teaching that seriously confuses the issue of staying single is the teaching that masturbation, or indeed ejaculation of any sort, is always evil, always as bad as committing adultery itself. It goes something like this. If you have nocturnal emissions accompanied by dreams about sex, or if you masturbate while thinking about sex, that is lust, and that is the same as committing adultery. So, every male who has normally functioning sex organs is guilty of adultery unless he marries. Well, of course, with one exception. If you're gay, you can't marry. So, you're going to hell no matter what, just for getting sexually aroused. Please watch my video on masturbation and pornography to get a better understanding about that almost universal teaching. The teaching that all masturbation is the equivalent of adultery has led to self-righteousness and hypocrisy in churches everywhere, and to unreasonable and unnecessary demands on wives and otherwise legitimate marriages. There's a lot more I could say about that, but what is relevant in the context of this teaching about staying celibate is that celibacy is not impossible. It's not limited to some kind of super saints who never get sexually aroused. You just need to determine that any pleasurable sexual stimulation you will ever experience will not come from a human sexual partner. If you want more information on that, watch the video on masturbation. Then write to me personally if you still have questions. What we do know of Jesus' disciples is that at least one of them, Peter, was married. However, it's quite possible that most or all of the others were not married, as there is no mention of their wives. Certainly there would have been more freedom for them to come and go if they were single than if they had to fit that in around their duties to the wives and or their children. If you marry, you will have problems, but I spare you. I think there's a lot of loaded implication in those final 4 words, but I spare you. Marriage is so glamorized in our society, and yet Paul had the courage to speak the truth. We need to make it very clear to our young people, well, to the rest of us as well. In this world where so many marriages fail, marriage is a lot of very hard work. True, in many ways marriage can be the closest thing to heaven that we can experience in this life, but it can be the closest thing to hell as well. At some point in your marriage, you will almost certainly discover and experience the worst side of your partner, and they'll discover the worst about you too. For both of you, your patience and your willingness to love them anyway will be sorely tested. But hey, I spare you. Just consider that reality well before you head into a marriage, assuming that it's going to be the solution to your problems. Probably the number one reason I hear coming from men who choose not to obey Jesus is that their wives do not agree with them doing it. Some will even try to quote scripture to prove that they cannot serve God because they're married, that they're morally obligated to put their wives first. They're not, of course, but it's just the sad reality of an earlier decision to race into marriage without seriously considering whether God was asking them to stay single. In conclusion, celibacy is the preferred option. Like it or not, that's what Jesus taught, and it's what Paul taught. Yes, in the end, you're still free to make your own choice. It's up to you. But if you can possibly stay single, I have it from Jesus himself, do it. Stay single. This is the option, and that is the preference that Jesus taught, but which you will almost certainly not hear anywhere else. Thank you.